had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. This young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it, and luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s.
Hey, welcome back to the Wits Podcast. We are here with Peter Merrick today. We have got a wicked conversation that every single young entrepreneur, someone that's starting out a business, someone that is new in their business, someone that's running a business, should listen to this episode. You have read over 5,000 books. You're probably one of the most well-read people I know. And we are going to have a pretty cool conversation today around what you call the 6 key questions. The key questions that we are all asked in our lifetime at a different point. And I think the audience and the things we want to talk to a little bit about today is, coming out of COVID, people are starting into their careers. You've got a lot of advice to give to someone that's about to go on this big journey. So welcome and thank you for being here. All right, so let's kick things right off. So in your book, King of Main Street, which by the way, everyone has to buy, and we'll definitely have to get some plugs.
Can I do a plug right now?
You can do a plug. Go for it. Right, but
hi, Mom.
Right? But why don't we start with what you call the 6 key questions? Because I thought that was interesting. You were like, yeah, I got 6 key questions that every person in their lifetime are going to have to answer. So walk us through
Hopefully
that.
they answer them.
Hopefully they answer them. Some don't answer them. But I think the exercise is if you do answer these questions intelligently, rationally, thoughtfully, they will actually allow you to move forward.
Yes.
All right. So kick us off with the questions. What are they?
Well, I just want to share something, Greg. It has to be what I've discovered is these questions arise at different ages in somebody's life. And some people will go through all 6 of them, and some of them will get stuck. And the people who actually ask the last question the earliest, those are the people that have the greatest impact on their communities, their lives, and everybody who comes across them. So let's talk about the first question. Who am I? It's an identity question. When you're born, you're a sponge. I'm a sponge. I don't know what I am, what I do, and I'm born and I'm told I'm a male, and I'm told I'm a brother, and I'm told that I belong to a certain religion, and I have a certain nation. I take in identities, and it's coming from other sources, and I'm trying that on.
In other words, your identity is projected on you, or you're told who you are.
Well, I look at it as being bumblebees. You show up and all the bumblebees are going left and right, and you start following them. So it's an identity question. Okay. And around high school, the question comes up, how do I fit in? And we all been through high school. You want to think that you're cool and, your reputation, because you're worried how people are going to see you and how you see yourself. So you're trying to fit in. And this is where a lot of pressure comes on a lot of people because they really don't know how they fit in.
And that's a broader question today, considering the world of social media, right? I mean, once upon a time when you and I went to high school, right, how did you fit in was determined by which door you hung out with, which stairs you got to sit on, which section you got to hang out with, right? Are you part of this group or that group type of thing? Today, the pressure to fit in is way more.
Well, the other thing is a lot of kids, when I went home and when you went home, the world stayed outside, right. And now you've got people coming into your home. Right now, we're speaking, someone's going to be watching us, and we're going to be in their homes. In the past, that wouldn't happen.
It's true, very true.
And they can be from all over the world. So how do I fit in? And that's a lot of pressure. And for a lot of people, it's very uncomfortable. Like high school is maybe sometimes the best experience for kids, and sometimes it's the worst experience. Yeah. Now, around 20 years old, the question becomes, what will I do? It's different than the first question, which is an identity question, which I'm trying to figure out who I am. It's like, will I be a podcaster? Will I be a financial advisor? Will I be a husband? Will I be a child? What will I do? It's more like how I'm really going to do something in the world. And that's a question that, when we're talking today, that's a question that someone starting out, they're asking themselves. And it's pretty interesting because I would suggest to anybody who's young that they should just listen to what the world is telling them, what they are telling themselves, because I've seen people become very successful doing things that I couldn't imagine being successful at. I worked with an individual. He sold his business. He had outhouses, from like the cheap plastic ones that you saw at a construction site to these beautiful ones that would show up at outdoor weddings.
And just
and
for
he
the
made
audience,
a living for
what
it.
is an outhouse? Just because certain generations might not know what it is.
Well, it really depends on where you are, because if you're in America, you might say an outside bathroom. If you're Canadian, it's a washroom. If you're in the UK, it's toilet.
Right.
So it really depends.
Basically, this is a porta potty.
Porta potty.
Porta toilet, right?
Yes.
Those big blue things that you see on construction sites.
Now just think about that. This person was doing $15 million worth of gross business, basically having that business. So be open, because there could be an opportunity that no one else is going down. If everyone's going left, you're not going to be very successful. If you go right, then you're going to find an opportunity. And the way to do that is to actually listen to what you're telling yourself and also what the world's telling you, and also knowing what's being presented to you.
So let's spend time on this question. I know we haven't gotten to 4, 5, or 6, but what will I do? I mean, this is a big question right now. We're having this conversation. We call it for the 25-year-old to 30-year-old, right? Which is young adults launching into their career. Some of them are just finishing school now, their MBAs or whatnot, and now there's the big question on where do we go in life? What will I do? So what is the advice that we give that individual starting out? I mean, how does this question help us?
I think the most important thing is to get as much perspective as possible. When you're in high school, they say trail someone around. Mm-hmm. I'm going to suggest that that's how someone should look for their career. They should go and get exposed to as many things as possible. Because a lot of people feel that they just have to jump in after graduating university or finishing college or high school and start making money, and that's what they're going to do.
Make money
or do something, but not being open to a whole variety of things. So what I'm going to suggest, do as much as you can. Be exposed to as many people as you can. Listen. And we spoke about this before, Greg. If you don't have access to people who are doing things that are exciting to you or things that you might find interesting, the best way is to read. Because you are being brought into different worlds and the way people are able to think, articulate it. And what is sharing a story? What is language? It's binding time. So I can share a story to you, and you can actually experience it through my storytelling, so you don't have to have it directly. But again, to be really successful, you're going to then have to go out and make it your story and test it.
Right.
So get as much experience as you possibly can. Because I know, for one thing that I find very satisfying for myself is when I started from university, I was going to follow a path that luckily I was exposed to something else just before I went to law school. And I woke up and I said, I want to go to law school. I don't want to be in school for another few years, because when I graduated in 1991, in Canada, to become a lawyer, you had to apprentice for a year. It's called articling. Yep. And a lot of my friends who were real keeners, they got into law school after their second year, and they couldn't get articling jobs. And I started working at a brokerage firm. And I realized that my parents had lied to me. And what do I mean by that? I thought that you become a professional, and then if you want to be the garbage man, at least you got a profession to fall back into.
Right.
And I went through an entire career path that I couldn't even imagine, because I was exposed to some incredible people who opened up my eyes. And there's people out there, if you find the right people, they want to share their wisdom.
Tell us about your first job. Let's go there for a second. So you're fresh out of school.
I've had some classics.
All right. You're introduced into this brokerage world. Tell us about that experience. I mean,
well, I graduated during the recession. The first job I got is I started working for a large brokerage firm, and then I worked for a smaller one. And the smaller one was, they were selling over-the-counter stock. I'm just going to leave it there. I realized that quickly was not
a boiler room situation.
Yes, and I quickly knew that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
However, I'd grown up not even thinking about entering the financial sector. Now this is in 1991, and there was a loophole in the regulations that you could start a mutual fund dealer, and all you needed to do is come up with $25,000. And that was like great. It's like I could actually get a license with the Securities Commission to sell mutual funds. Now, mutual funds in 1990 in Canada, for example, were $24 billion in assets under management. By the end of the decade, the beginning of 2000, there were $600 billion, from $24 billion to $600. It was crazy. Companies were just created out of nowhere. So I had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. Thank God for those 10 years, the market just went up.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to date myself.
Well, that's what they say, great time to start a business is in the recession.
Well, I was open because I'm a Gen Xer.
Yeah.
And what that basically means is my generation is about a third smaller than the baby boomers.
Yeah.
And the baby boomers were in their positions, so there was no jobs available in traditional types of businesses. So the two businesses that opened up opportunities that existed when I got out that did not exist when I was going to university were the technology field and the financial field. They did not exist. It was the Wild West in both of them. And I was very fortunate. And I always joke, thank God the markets just went up. I would sit down and I would take somebody's entire life savings that they spent 15, 20 years accumulating it, this young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it. And luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s. Yeah. It was a boom time. Because just imagine a lawyer, an accountant, other professionals, Greg, they were completely scrutinized, but those people could not take your life savings and blow it.
Right.
And in my field, there was no rules.
Yeah.
And thank God I survived it, and I was mature enough to say, this is a great opportunity. And I got educated.
Yeah.
And I dealt with people, and because I was starting out, I started working with computer consultants back then, and most of my clients were not entrepreneur to begin with. However, a lot of the banks and the telecommunication companies let these people go, and there was something called Y2K and the internet that
I remember
just
Y2K, where all the numbers were going to roll to zero and the world was going to blow up.
And what happened was these people who were making $30,000, $40,000 a year working on this like basic code, they were able to become consultants and make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year because there wasn't enough. Right. And I started working with them with their pension, moving their pension plans, disability, doing planning, all these things. And it was like a phenomenal time. And I remember 9/11 because everyone has their 9/11 experience. And for me, it was another awakening for my business. Similar to when I graduated university, it was a recession. I remember I had a meeting with a client and we were going to transfer close to $1 million portfolio. I was excited. I was going to make a big commission of about $40,000. And I arrive, I'm driving to his office and I hear a Cessna has just hit one of the World Trade buildings. And in the meetings at 9:15, I get into the parking lot a little after 9 o'clock, and I'm hearing on the radio there's a Cessna, and then I hear another plane hit the other World Trade Center, and I'm thinking I'm so smart, like this has got to be more than just like a Cessna hitting a plane. It's got to be terrorists. Like I'm the only one who has that thought. So I go in there and I'm talking and I'm so excited. It's a beautiful day, just like today, where it was completely blue. And around 45 minutes into our conversation, his wife calls. Another plane just hit the Pentagon. So our meeting ends. That day that I thought I was going to be making all this money, I'm driving home. And I'm like in shock because I'm saying, I don't know how I'm going to make a living now because this big ride I've been on. And as I shared with you, the mutual fund and the investment industry was a ride. People were throwing money at it and it just went up, and 9/11 happened, and it was like everybody didn't know what was going to happen. So as I was driving home, I realized something. I dealt with all these computer consultants, setting them up. And none of these people were really entrepreneurs by nature. They were thrown into it by life. I realized that because none of these people were entrepreneur by nature, they just found themselves in a situation where they had a skill set and they had a value. I realized, I was setting myself, marketing myself as someone who can transition an employee to a computer independent consultant in their business and all their needs. And then I realized I was the expert in severance. So I called up every single trade paper, and I called them up and I said, I'm an expert in severance, let me write an article. And that's where I would recommend for many people, because I'm very fortunate that that thought hit me. And there was a book that was written a number of years ago called Who Moved My Cheese? My cheese had been moved, and I'm now of the belief as long as there's human beings, doesn't matter if the market does well, it doesn't do well, there's always going to be interaction, and human beings can help themselves. They love to trade. And you have to find out what's being traded at that day. And that was a very pivotal moment for me because that's how I got into where I am right now.
You found yourself ass backwards in this brokerage, right?
Yeah.
And you started to adjust and to adapt to adapt for the circumstance and to ride that wave. Where did that leave you?
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, so where did you go from there? So from that brokerage?
Oh, I went and I raised $25,000, and my partner, I convinced another guy I was working with who was around the same age. We were like 23 years old. They get $25,000, so we have $50,000 working capital, and we got a mutual fund dealer license. And we got really lucky because it was 1991. And do you know where the Bay Adelaide Center is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, that was a parking lot, and there was a building that now is one of the faces. What they do in Toronto is like they don't allow them to destroy the face of the building. They put it in, let's say, a 12-story building, and they put it into like a 57-story building. And anybody from America who's watching this, if you watch Suits, that's the building.
Yeah. Because Suits is shot in Toronto.
And it's shot in that building. Yeah. So what happened was they just wanted someone to pay the taxes, enough money for the taxes. So they gave me 2 parking spots for $400, and the address was this. It was the best address ever. It was 347 Bay Street, and our suite was 900, even though there were other offices. So think about this. When I'm calling people up and they see my address, it says 347 Bay Street, Suite 900. It's like I've got the floor.
Right.
Even though I have a closet.
Right.
Literally, it was a closet. My partner and I had it. And we got it for less than $400 with 2 parking spots. Because that's how bad the recession was.
Right. You can't find things at that pricing anymore.
Well, you can't find that building anymore. They knocked it down.
Right. So, all right, so let's go back to this. So, what advice do you have for someone? Sorry, I mean, you wrote a book. Well, let's back up. Tell me why you wrote the book. What was the motivation behind writing the book?
Well, I guess one of the things that I found, just stepping back as we're focusing on what will I do. So I found myself having a mutual fund dealership, and then I realized I really didn't have any skill sets. Like practical skill sets, because I came against the world, and I realized that I wasn't that hot. Can I say shit?
Of course you can.
I wasn't that hot shit I thought I was getting out of university. I thought the seas were gonna part for me, and I would just she's so wonderful. And I would and it didn't. And I would actually, the best thing that happened, it didn't that. Because I don't think I would have appreciated it, and maybe I would have really screwed up. I've screwed up quite a bit. However, I would have really screwed up if I had hit it out of the park to begin with. Mm-hmm. So what I'm getting at is, we spoke about this before, Greg. I think you've got to be open to what presents itself, and you got to get as much knowledge as possible. Because I still remember I'd opened up my office. I realized I sort of heard about this sales thing, and I thought I was so slick and whatever, but I realized I really didn't know, because how to sell, what people wanted, things of that nature. So right down the street from my office was what I think was the coolest, biggest, best bookstore in the world. It was called the world's largest bookstore. And literally, I've traveled North America. I've never seen a bookstore that big. And you could find anything there. So I went there, and I remember I bought 7 books. And I went through university. I read, but I didn't really read because I had no reason to listen.
Yeah.
And I've been a professor, and I got to tell you, the best students are older students, because they have life experience to actually relate to what you're teaching, and then you've given them a name and you've given them something to think about, and they can actually apply. And I bought 7 books. I just remember I bought 7 books, and I never read a book from cover to cover, but I said, I have to go and develop discipline, because that's what my father's been telling me. I have to have a clean room. I've got to be disciplined. So my discipline is going to be, I'm only going to read the next book after I finish reading the first book. And this became I was almost like Karate Kid, wash on, wash off. I would not do it. And I finished those 7 books, and I started exploring more. And there were a lot of topics I found really interesting, and I became very bold. I started hunting down the authors of the books I really liked. And instead of looking at the bibliographies at the back, I said, which are the 3 or 4 books that you read that had the greatest impact on you? And I just was...
You reached out to the authors?
All the time.
Wow.
I have, I think I have 17,000 people on my LinkedIn, and I would say I probably have about 1,500 authors. I'm not going to be someone who reads your stuff and you're not going to know who I am. If you had an impact on me, I want to reach out to you. And it's as I get older, because I'm 15 now. Well, okay, I'm 51. I feel a need to do it. If someone has an impact on me, because when you read a book, you're having a dialogue with the author.
Right.
If it's a good book. And and I know who they are. I want to actually reach out. I want to ask questions. And I've met a number of them. I've jumped on planes and I've met these people. If I have a burning question, and I would suggest that if you don't have access to the people the dream that you want in life, that you sort of see the image of the future, read. And believe it or not, and I'll share a story which I believe is so powerful, why reaching out to the authors, because I read something which changed my life, and it came from an author. There was this woman, unfortunately, she's not with us anymore. Her name was Barbara Max Hubbard. She was born, I guess, during the Depression, and after World War II, she was at the Sorbonne, and she wrote, she ends up marrying an artist, and she moves to New Jersey, and she feels isolated. She's had 5 kids, and she goes into the bookstore, and she sees a book written by Abraham Maslow. And back then, self-development, in a bookstore, was probably about 3 or 4 books. She read the book, it spoke to her. She wrote a letter to me. She said, Dr. Maslow, if you're in New York City, I'd like to take you out to lunch, and I'd like to discuss some of the things you've done. And he was at Brandeis University in Boston. He picked up the phone and called her and took her out to lunch. Isn't that great? Mm-hmm. She offers lunch, he buys lunch.
Great.
She did this to Jonas Salk. She did this to Buckminster.
And this was Maslow's hierarchy needs.
Maslow was hierarchy of needs. Buckminster Fuller, who did the geodesic dome. Jonas Salk, who did the polio vaccine. Like she reached out to not Carl Jung, to Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. And every time she sent out a letter saying, I'll take you out to lunch, these people would call her. This is what she said, which actually spoke to me and which changed the way I looked. And this happened in 1999.
She wrote a book, I'm assuming.
She did.
Okay.
She wrote several books.
So that's what you're talking about. You read,
right. I read it.
You were talking to. Okay.
But she said this about writers, and I've written 800 published articles and 4 books.
You've written 4 books?
Unfortunately, yes.
Wow. I didn't realize.
Textbooks, three of them were textbooks.
Yeah. Okay.
Not this one here.
Yeah.
And I got a good story for this one. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But this is what she said. She said and you can tell this when someone writes. When I read a book now, I can quickly tell whether the person is writing about how great I am. And this is what separates a great writer and a great teacher from someone who's really arrogant or someone who's not that good. So there's people who write or teach, and it's all about, I'm great, I'm wonderful. And then there's other people who say and teach, and this is what I get excited about, and I can immediately pick up whether when I meet someone, is like, here's an incredible topic. This is what I discovered in my search. Greg, look at this star. And then you look at it now. It's my responsibility to get, if you're interested, to go and point out the star and share with what I know. And my hope is you're going to add to what I didn't see. And that makes the difference between a great writer and a great teacher and someone who's not. People who are, I've got a PhD, I'm so brilliant, or I wrote a book, I'm brilliant, or people who generally are shooting a flare out there, and before the world of the internet, that was the only way that you could shoot a flare, and saying, this is what I think. So you know why they reached out to her? What she came back and had discovered? They were shooting flares. They felt they were seeing a change happening in society, and she was focusing on the humanistic movement. And they were not writing because they wanted fame and glamour and whatever. They were generally shooting a flare out, looking for people who were seeing that as well. So the analogy I would use, society was a caterpillar, and they had actually seen the vision of a monarch butterfly. And that's why they reached out, because many people are called, few people basically choose to be chosen. So what I'm thinking from my experience, and you asked me about the book, and writing for me, and seeking, and getting on a plane and meeting someone who actually had a huge opportunity, who saw something that I hadn't seen, and I'm just excited to meet them. It's not coming from out there. It's like I have to do it. Like my last book, I'd say for 30 years I collected stuff for it. Yeah. I basically said, this is really neat. One day I'm going to want to use it. Like I need to find a way of putting it on.
Obsessive about it.
Well, some people call people workaholics. And I would actually have a different word for it. I say, well, those people who call people workaholics, they haven't found a hobby. Because if you love what you do, in this society, you can get paid to do so many different things that are like, have nothing to do with like food or clothing or building. It's like, then, it's just something that comes from within. It's something I have to do. And that's how I feel about a lot of things I'm passionate about, because it's something I have to do. I don't have a choice. It's just, if I don't do it, there's something missing. And I wish that upon so many people, and it doesn't have to be a sexy job or whatever, because you can figure it out and make a good living, by providing. It could come manifest in so many ways. Like getting back to the toilets, the potty toilets. Providing a needed service and making people so happy that it comes on time and they appreciate it and they know that you're going to provide a good service. Because I don't believe it's like this person's a writer, this is a lawyer. That it's humans relating to human beings.
Right.
And it's actually finding those human beings, and this is the key, who value what you have to contribute. And that turns into money.
You know, but, look, I love what you're talking about. I agree with it entirely. Do you think people still think like this? You think the mentality's still out there, that people still operate with this type of mindset, which is it is about being obsessive, it is about grinding, it is about, not being obsessive and super passionate about what you're doing. Do you think that still exists in the society today, or do you think we're losing some of that?
I think it exists for the few.
Okay.
The lucky few who are willing to rub up against the world, like as I mentioned, and through that they actually find their passion. I truly believe, and change doesn't happen slowly. It can, but it happens quickly. It's exponential. So you find something that you like, you find someone you like. You don't even know what you like. So one of the best suggestions I ever had is always listen. Doesn't matter what someone has to pitch, listen. Because maybe they're going to give you something that's going to be of value. A word directing you to a job opportunity, maybe a career opportunity. But if you don't listen, you will never be exposed. And again, that's why I say for a lot of people who don't have that exposure, the best way to get that exposure is read books. The reason I like reading books is the meditation. I like it much better than, I know we're having a podcast, but that's being thrown at me. When I read a book, there's almost a conversation that's happening where I'm writing in the margins. I have highlighters. I'm having a conversation. I'm taking other information that I've been collecting over a lifetime, and I'm trying to expand my understanding for me.
Yeah.
And that being said, for someone who's young, to be exposed. I had someone come to me, one of my students, and he asked me a question, and he was talking, do you think I'll be successful? And I said, I believe you'll be successful, but I got to tell you what I wish upon you. I wish that you get beaten up so badly, but you have the tenacity to get up. Because that's when you're going to be counted. It's easy to hit it out of the park the first time. Well, let's look at what happens.
Luck.
It's luck. However, it also has to do with perspective. Because if you go to bat and you hit it out of the park the first time, you're going to think that that's the way it always is. And that's not the way it is.
Right.
And I learned that very early on in my career, because when I started going and looking for clients, I looked for computer professionals. And there was a company that at nighttime, I would wake up and I would call their auto dialer, the number you'd call in, and then I figured out the extensions, and then I'd call 100, maybe 1,000 extensions to get 100 key people.
Right.
So I got into this company that was growing like crazy. It was a technology company, and you had to see how in the late 90s how the parking lot changed. You had these little nondescript little cars that were junkers that these kids had from university, and then by 2000 you had like these big Ferraris or whatever, because their stock options went from $4 a stock to $132 because it had a stock. And you saw this, and you had these young kids. Some of them still lived at home, but they were worth maybe $1 million, $2 million on paper because of these stocks.
Right.
And I sat down with this older engineer who was about 45, who was 45 years old, and he had actually had a full career. And he knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because he had perspective. Those kids, they did it. And I got to share something which is really sad. I saw them become more aggressive. I saw them start doing leverage because at that point they just thought they had the Midas touch. And after 2000, when the market crashed, these guys were wiped out. One thing that the analogy I use for why it's not good to hit it out of the park at the beginning is a duck in water. Greg, if you're a duck in water and it rains and the water level increases, we're very arrogant thinking that I'm the one causing the water level to rise. And if that's the only experience I had because I'm a duckling, then I don't understand rain is causing the water level to rise.
Right. And that's, I think, the problem in a lot of cases today is, we live in this world of, call it social media, where everyone's expectation is to hit it at the park on day one. I should, have the dream job, have the dream relationship, have the dream lifestyle. I should be able to accumulate and have things, and that's my question to you before, which is, gone are the days of people going through that grit and tenacity to build what they did. I mean, listen to your story, right? You find yourself ass backwards in a mutual fund brokerage very early in your career, not knowing what the fuck to do. But guess what? You scrounged up that money. You right, and then you hustled and you sold and you grinded and you grinded and you read. And you are, that's probably one of your greatest attributes, Peter, which is you are an avid reader. Like, you've read more books than anyone I know.
Well, I was searching for someone to give me answers, and I share with you the secret, and we're moving to the next question.
Okay, which is?
So let me recap the three previous questions. Okay. The first question is an identity question. Who am I? The second one is, how do I fit in? The third one is, what will I do? And the fourth question is a powerful question. And it's, who have I become?
Right. Which is easy to answer, which you kind of have already.
Well, it's because I'm 51. Now, let me share with you what I discovered. So let's focus heavily on the fourth question first. Who have I become? You're no longer planning your life. You are actually in your life. It's usually 40 years old. And right after you answer that question, a huge revelation for me happened. When I really answered it, it was around 42, 43. I would read nonstop. I've almost been hit by a car too many times. I would walk carrying a book, reading, thinking I was going to discover something magical that was going to give me what I was looking for. And you know what I discovered? I understood the story of the Buddha when it came to me. The story of the Buddha, both women and gentlemen, was that the Buddha, who was a prince, he sits under a tree and he comes to enlightenment. Well, he was already in his 40s when it happened. It's a metaphor for everybody in aging. And I'm figuring, well, I didn't have to read 5,000 books. I could have just sat under a tree, and that calm inside myself would have come. Because what makes someone want to take on the world is they think if I do something external to myself, like around me, that's going to give me that inner calm. And this calmness came over me. Where it's I'm thinking I didn't have to read any books. Yeah, I've got lots of stuff that keeps my mind occupied that I know, and you want to know something, you have me over for dinner. I can talk about the most useless stuff in the world because I probably read it. However, what I was really looking for was just that calm, that self-acceptance. So people who cannot answer that question or refuse to answer that question, who have I become, and accept that, they have issues. And let me explain what those issues are. And I've discovered them, and I've lived them myself, and I've observed them with other people, and they call it midlife crisis. Life should be a two-legged race. The morning of your life, which those first three questions are, and the transitional question, which is who I may become, and the afternoon and evening of our lives. So Carl Jung and many of the great thinkers who've looked at that, they say in the morning of life, what's it about? Accumulation and building up an ego. the next race, and they should be, it doesn't matter how you finish in the first half. And you can be really successful in the second half, financially, everything else. The second half is deconstruction, is giving it away, giving wisdom away, giving away my money, giving away my time, but leaving a legacy. So question 4 is, who have I become? Am I the person I want to become? Because a lot of people wake up and they say, I was going to be successful. I was going to have 1,000 people working for me. And you really have to take stock. And you shouldn't be so depressed if you didn't get where you wanted to be, because let's look at Mother Teresa. You think Mother Teresa wanted to be in Calcutta, India? She made the best of that situation, and because she accepted it and she welcomed it, we're talking about it right now, and she's been dead since 97. But think about it. She wasn't like she wasn't in some great monastery or whatever. She was in the middle of a country that wasn't even Catholic. And we talk about her. So the first half, it doesn't matter where you finish. You have to say, in the morning it was cycling, in the afternoon it's swimming. 2 different sports. And my goals should be different. And I read about this stuff. It was academic. And I think before I started writing this book, and where it became really important to me, that calm came over me. I said, you know, I didn't have to read 5,000 books and listen to people. If I just sat under the tree for 25 years, that feeling just would have, if I was mature enough, that feeling would have come over me. And, you know, people who actually can let go are healthy. People who can't let go are miserable. And I've had the fortune to sit down with several billionaires. One was really healthy, and unfortunately, one was very unhealthy to the day he died. He was still running the game in the first part of life. It was ego, it was accumulation, it was I'm a big man. The other man was comfortable, and at the end I want to share a story about the conversation I had with him, which was really revealing to me. And he was comfortable with what he had accomplished. And it's because, who have I become? And am I okay with who I become? Because that's the qualifying question. Have I become that person? And then there's...
All right, just before you go there, What was your answer? Do you remember what your answer was?
Who have I become?
Yeah.
I think I was focusing at that point, I wanted to do something big and grand. Something that it would outlive me. I was sitting in the 54th floor of a really tall building, and a question came to me. And you know, I'm fortunate. I make a few shekels here and there. I can, like, you know, I've some people like hanging out with me and like me doing like whatever I do with them. But I'm sitting in this building, and a question came to me, and the question that came to me is like, who built this building? And I was thinking the person, and it was a big building. I think it's like a 60-story building. It was like one of the biggest buildings in the city that you and I grew up in, Toronto. And I'm thinking, I don't know who built that building. Mm-hmm. Who built the Chrysler building? I don't know who built the Chrysler building. You know, these are the questions that are coming in my mind. It's like, who was, like, you know, the most successful plastic manufacturer in, let's say, the 60s and the 50s when they started making? No one knows who that person is. The home that you live in, who built it? Let's say
the person that created the Post-it note, right?
Yeah, who are these people? And then, you know what dawned on me? I know who Shakespeare is. I know who Faulkner is. These people transcend. And what dawned on me, and it became an obsession, I said, I want to write something that says something that has the ability to transcend. The problem was I didn't have enough life experience to do it.
Yeah, but you didn't say, I want to write a book and then sell the book and be famous. You said, I want to create something that is, paraphrase, timeless.
Well, I even take it a step further. So when I started dealing with my midlife crisis stuff, and we all do with our different ways, one of the things that I thought about was in the Middle Ages, in the Jewish tradition, when Eastern European Jews had nothing, they would write a living will because they weren't allowed to own land, they weren't allowed to own anything. So what was the living will? It's not what it is today where I say, like, this is what I like if I become disabled, or this is how my health care would be taken care of, and this would be how my finances would be dealt with. That's what a living will is today. But a living will back then was, while I'm alive, I want to tell the people important to me what I believe and what I've seen. That was what it was. And to be able to write an effective living will, you needed to come to two understandings. One, you were going to die. That's one. You weren't going to live forever. You had nothing else to give but the observations and wisdom that you might have gleaned by walking the earth. Number two, you needed an opinion, right and wrong, what worked and didn't. Not this relativity where like this and that. No, I stand. Because I know we're in a world right now where like everyone acts if it's relative. However, let's be honest. Someone who has a real opinion is a very attractive person. You might not agree with them, but you know where they stand.
Yeah, I think that's important because it also allows answers for transparency, right? As you said, I know what this person stands for. I know what they are. I got a buddy who has got some real hard positions about what's going on in the world right now.
Yep.
Right. And I've had my conflict with him, but fuck, man, I respect what this guy's doing and the decisions he's making. I don't know if I totally believe what he believes, but as you said, he's got an opinion and he is unapologetic for it.
And he shouldn't be.
Right. Which I think is important. It's a very important attribute.
The one rule that I have is I have my opinion, and I've come to it, and I wanted to communicate it in a way that other people might be able to learn or find value in it. That being said, I will not force it upon you. I'm a libertarian in that aspect. Don't tell me what I should think or how I should live. And I say this, not you, I'm saying everybody.
Yeah.
At the same time, I won't tell you what to do. The only caveat is what you do, as long as it does not impact me and other people in a negative way. I don't need you to believe the sky is green. I do not need that. I don't have to go and put you in jail. I don't have to censor you. But as soon as you tell me that I have to say the sky is purple and I have to actually see it, then I have a problem of it. And in this day and age, I am now becoming more vocal about it. Because the last freedom I have, and this is from Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite quotes, man's search for meaning. For those who have never read Viktor Frankl, I'm going to suggest that it goes immediately on your reading list. It's only 147 pages, like the small edition. He'd survived the Holocaust. Yeah. And he was the heir to Freud, and he was thrown into Auschwitz, and he got beaten up, and they took his manuscript, and all he was left was his observation. And what he took from that is he got to see human beings at their best and at their worst. And the quote that sticks with me is, the last human freedom is to choose one's own beliefs, one's own way. Everything else you can have taken away from you. But what you believe and how you choose to act in the world, that is yours.
That's powerful, man. That's super fucking powerful.
Well, this guy was really scary smart.
Right. Right.
It's not me.
No, but
I have to be honest. I've read a lot.
Yeah.
But I am nothing without these people who've asked questions, developed a lexicon of language that I can understand, that they're sharing. And this is, again, what I would suggest to younger people. But getting back to this question that you were asking, and the one we're on, is who have I become? You know, some people transition greatly and other people don't. You know, and the people who basically have spent a lot of time doing introspection will do better than people who've only focused on the outside world for validation. And it doesn't matter how successful they look outside. There's a lot of people we know who have lots of money, who've got really great careers, and they really, and God forbid they would ever go and ask themselves a question that forced them to not look out there, but to look in here.
But, you know, I talk a lot about that with, you know, the exercise of self-awareness, which the true exercise of self-awareness is very difficult. It's not a warm, fuzzy, positive exercise. It's not something that, you know, you sit down and you're like, oh, I'm self-aware. Oh, look, I'm this, I'm that. No, you got to go deep and go, oh shit, I am this. Oh damn, I am that. Like, you got to look at your dysfunction. You got to take responsibility for where things aren't working. I think it's a lot of what you're talking about. I'm just coming from a different angle, which is call it a little bit harder, which is I am less forgiving with people for not being self-aware and not being reflective and introspective and not recognizing the importance of them formulating goals and objectives and stuff like that, right? Okay. And it's everything you've just articulated, and you've articulated it very well, specifically through these questions, which is, you know, I loved your analogy about sort of the morning and the afternoon, which is the morning is like, you know, those first three questions, which is ego, right? Who am I? How do I fit in? And what am I going to do? Me. And then there's this sort of transitional time.
Can I add to what
Yeah.
you're sharing? I don't get angry at those people.
Yeah.
These people have not faced enough challenges. If I haven't had enough adversity in my life where things don't work, then why would I, you know, self-reflect? It's like it's those moments in people's lives. Those they call it a pattern interruption.
Yes,
a parent dies. I get fired. I get divorced. I lose a child.
Major rupture in life.
Yes, and then at that point, everything is up for grabs.
Yeah, Covet.
Yes, and there's a lot of people who are making some major decisions. Unfortunately, they have. How would I explain? They haven't had not Timothy Leary. There was Stanislav Grof. He administered over 4,000 or 5,000 LSD trips, more than Timothy Leary in Czechoslovakia. And he was against LSD experiments, and he explained why. And the reason is, he says, there's this awareness out there that our senses shield us from. And what it's like is it rips away. And if someone doesn't do proper working out and gets ready for it, it's going to kill them. It's very similar to a lottery winner who is not properly
trained in money. Yeah, they spend there's a stat. You'll probably know this, and if not, we should look it up.
3 years.
Right, 3 years. Yeah. So they'll bankrupt in 3 years, right?
Worse than that, every single relationship they had is destroyed.
Yeah.
Forget about the money.
Because it's all started with money. Like, oh, I'm going to give cousin Billy and cousin Jenny some money. I'm going to buy this boat. I'm going to buy the car. Now, as they're buying all these things cost money. I even look
at it as a different way than that. Yeah. When you see someone who had nothing, who built something, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg, because what you're not seeing is their ability to deal with ever increasing levels of complexity. Right. So what you're seeing is the 1% of the iceberg. You're not seeing all this other stuff. In the physical world, and I'll use an example, and I always like the example of the seen universe that can be seen, whatever, is 3%. And 97% is dark matter and dark energy. We don't see it, but it's there. So when you see someone really successful who's done it themselves, not someone who inherited it, what you're seeing is their ability to deal with ever level complexity. And you could take it away from them, and they could probably do it again, because they're able to deal with the complexity of nature and of their lives. So it's something which is really important. But let's address the fifth question, which is almost like a human need, especially for men as they get older. And unfortunately, our society does not assist in this anymore. It is the need. The question is, what have I accomplished? You realized at that point, and this is number 5, that there's more days behind me than ahead of me.
Right.
And you just can't help it. And I'll share, I'm living in San Diego now. And the question, it's been a year, what prompted me?
Yeah.
Well, I was a typical man. I ignored what my body was telling me. And I ended up having to go to the hospital. And I got checked out, and I found out I didn't have a heart attack, I didn't have cancer, no diseases. And I go to the doctor, and I said, so I got to go home. And he says, no. And I said, why not? He says, this is a metric count, because I found out in the States they use a different metric. They said, well, men your age, their hemoglobin should be 130 to 140. So I said, so what's mine? He says, you're 56.
Whoa.
That's what, and we're all wondering how you're still walking.
Yeah.
Because I did the technical male thing where, like, if I walk through it,
You'll get better.
I'll get better.
Walk it off.
Walk it off.
Right.
Well, but you get to a certain age.
Yeah. And you're still a young guy at 51.
I am.
This happened when? How many years ago?
This happened just last year this time.
Okay, so fresh 50. That must have been a real mind fuck for you.
Well, no, I was in denial because they kept on saying I was told that if I didn't listen to my wife and go to the doctor, they said I probably would have got into a coma, and that would have been it for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, I still kept on thinking that they weren't really telling me what was right. And even after I had I had internal bleeding and they sewed me up and whatever, I still thought I could leave the hospital the next day and go to a meeting. That's how, but my body, quickly told me that I couldn't do it. And that's really question 5. What have I accomplished? You can't ignore it anymore. Your body isn't going to cooperate. And you have to start really turning in, because you can't really focus out, because I can't run anymore. It's like I realize that there's an end. And on top of that, friends and family are gone. You might be now the first generation. You might, most likely, you'll be an orphan because your parents will be gone. Like, you're now the older generation. So at that point, and this is where I step in, is I deal with business owners, very successful business owners, who are at the point where they're starting to see the end of what they're doing. And fortunately, because I've studied and I've been involved, I've been able to see what that is, and I can give them some direction. And one of the things that I felt, and this goes back to the fact that I had written about 800 published financial articles and 3 textbooks. I felt the problem and what was missing in the literature was, what is that last third going to be? And Greg, I read over 200 books on aging. And I got to share with you, it was very depressing. And I was reading it when I was like in my 30s and 40s. But you know what I quickly realized? It's a secret, but I'm going to share with everybody. The people I thought I was reading about, these people I was going to service, the difference between them and me was time. That's the difference between the eater and the eaten, is time. I was reading about these things, and I realized that this was going to happen to me. And I also realized our society is too focused on youth. I also looked at demographics. Until at the turn of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the West and North America was 43 years old.
Right.
And now we have Covet, and people are dying at 83. No one ever lived 83 at the turn of the 20th century. When I was born, life expectancy was 63. So they've calculated in demographics that 1.7 billion people have lived, and there's like 7.5 billion people alive right now. Only 600 million people have lived over the age of 65. Bismarck, when he brought in old age security in Germany in 1870, life expectancy was like 39 years old. And they put it at 65. That means retirement now should be over 100 because no one ever lived to 65 back then.
Right.
So what my whole point is, I started reading all this stuff and I got fascinated. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time searching out this really crazy studies. And the conclusion I came to, and the analogy I'll make, have you ever read The Lord of Flies?
Seen the movie.
Awesome movie. But you know what
the talking stick.
What the premise of that movie is? What happens to young people who don't have adults to
Matriarch.
show them, to control their urges? Well, in our society, very few people, because out of that 107 billion people who have ever lived on the planet, according to demographers, they think only 600 million people have lived out of that percentage over 65. And the 2/3 of them, 400 million, are alive today. And by 2050, they're saying there's going to be 1.5 billion. Why is that number important? Because that's more people than were alive at the turn of the 20th century on this planet who are going to be over the age of 65. Nobody knows what it's going to be like. Very few people. Mm-hmm. And I felt, because I was a professor, I was working with people. I hear about this thing called Freedom 55, sell your business. You go on cruises, have all you can eat buffets, and you'll be happy. And basically, you've got young people in their 30s who work at some marketing company telling old people this is what they're going to get satisfied. When I was 30 years old, I wanted to be in Club Med, I wanted to travel, and I wanted to just have leisure. So what have I accomplished? This is a time in a person's life, especially a business person, where two things are going to happen. One, they're going to want to start seriously closing things up, because they know that there's more days behind them than days ahead of them. So they're looking, if they have a business, they're looking at transitioning out, whether they sell it or they pass it on to family members or closing it up. They're serious about that. The other thing, which is almost a genetic thing, which starts kicking in, it's wanting to mentor. It's almost like a biological need.
Teach.
And I had a conversation with a young guy who wanted me to mentor him. You hear people saying, oh, hire someone to mentor and stuff like that, or, work with someone to mentor. And I looked at him and I said, and this was like a moment of clarity that came to me. I said, I can give you advice. However, mentoring you, I don't think I'm at that point right now, because when I go up the bat, I want it hit still out of the park. So a true mentor is really stepped out of the game, become a coach, not someone who's going to want to hit it out of the park. So this mentorship that they talk about, someone at work and whatever, those aren't true mentors, because if those people want to go and still rise up in their career and whatever, they can't step back. They might actually step forward and say, you might do all the work, Greg, and then I step out and I say, well, I did it. I'm still in the game. You got to look for a Ben Kenobi who's already done it, who's been a warrior, who now will be, who will step in and get joy from you, you accomplishing that. We spoke about this before, and just before we go to the last question, in the stories of King Arthur and the Round Table, there's the real story that people don't know about Merlin. And I found this so fascinating when I read about it. Merlin was, before he was a magician, he was a warrior king, and he was brutal. He killed people. He sacked villages. He did everything, because we think of him being gentle. Then he has a nervous breakdown when he asks the question, who have I become? So what does he do? He goes off into the woods, and he wants to master the art of controlling weather. Well, if you go to a Jungian psychologist or a Freudian psychologist and they say, what does that mean? It means emotions, because they got this huge amount of emotions, regret, happiness, all sorts of stuff.
The weather,
which is emotions. And it wasn't until he got clarity, he saw Camelot, that he was willing and he was able to bring Arthur, who he mentored. And we all know King Arthur of the Round Table.
Yep.
But most people, when they think of Merlin, they think of a gentle old man who
Wizard.
could do spells. But they don't realize, no, this guy was a warrior king.
He was a sycophant. He was a complete psychopath.
He was a psychopath. However, the mentor that every young person wants, someone who's asking the question, what will I do, which is number 2 in our list, is finding someone who's been a warrior, who's actually been able to make that transition, who's past the stage of competing. And that leads us to the last question. And the last question is, what will my legacy be? Those who ask that question, we mentioned this at the beginning, those who ask that question earliest in life, what will my legacy be? They leave the biggest impact because they are operating from vision. They're operating from thinking beyond themselves. They are operating from the belief that this will continue long after I'm gone. And I'm just part of this chain that was here before me and will be after me. And they've also taken responsibility, saying, while I get to enjoy it, I'm going to do something which the term I love best is called tukalam. Okay. Heal the world.
All right. Isn't that a place in Mexico as well?
No, that's
Tulum.
Tulum. Tukalam translates to
Tukalam.
Tukalam.
Yeah.
It translates to healing the world, which means you are doing what you can to make this better for the people who will be here after you. You recognize that you are only benefiting from us having these microphones, sitting on this table, having electricity, because other people who were here actually thought about that. And I'll close with this and any questions you have. I often think of the olive tree. It takes 80 years to create an olive, to grow an olive.
An olive or an olive tree?
An olive.
An olive. So the tree has to grow for 80 years before it'll produce olives on it. Okay.
Correct. So the person who plants the olive,
right, the
tree,
won't see it.
Won't see it.
That's fucked.
But think about that. Whatever you and I do today,
will be here.
How will that? No, will it be here? Yeah. How is that going to impact the next generation? In Native culture, they would say whatever decision you make, you have to think of how it's going to impact the 7th generation. To have that viewpoint that what you do today matters and should matter and shouldn't be trivial and should not be just acting in the moment. And those people who actually ask that question, what legacy will I leave? And they operate from having a purpose. They know what they'd like to see the world to be. And they know that they need help, that they can't do it themselves. And it was never about them. You are a cell in the organism. And again, because of COVID-19, we're all aware of herd immunity. What does that mean? We are part of an organism that we don't even know what we're part of. As a skin cell doesn't know how the impact it has on a brain cell, but it's all part of the human body, and you are part of the human body because we're part of the herd. And maybe you don't accomplish what you think that you want to accomplish, but I'll put it this way. You're part of every word you say, every action you do. It's called the butterfly effect. It can change the world, and it might not change the way that you want it to be, but be open to understand that you can take control of your life at any point, because this is an awakened dream. And unfortunately, many people choose to go through life sleepwalking.
We're going to end it on that one. Peter, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. This was probably one of the most interesting conversations I've seriously had in a long time, to the point that I was pretty much quiet like that. Not only I'm going to read your book, I'm going to like promote your book, right? But quiet. So Peter, thank you, man. This was really interesting. And I think super, super valuable. I mean, like if we were all able to, one, have these 6 questions and specifically start to answer them honestly and you know, authentically, these are really important things to think about. You're fucking awesome, dude. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
You got your whole lifetime.
Right,
Ask.
right. Okay, listen, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, don't forget to click that like button below. Don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to share. Thank you. We will see you next time. Hey, I'm Greg Witz. Thanks so much for coming and checking out the video. If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. So I'd highly suggest that you click this video over here. And don't forget to subscribe and share.